Joined here today with Minister John Streicker and Minister Tracy McPhee, who will be delivering an announcement today about government actions to reduce the spread of COVID-19. They'll each give an introductory statement, and then we'll go to questions from media. I think all of our media today are on the phone, so bear with us. We'll call you out through a roll call and give you an opportunity to ask your questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I would just like to begin by acknowledging we're on the traditional territory of the Kwanlundun First Nation and the Tonquachin Council. I'd also like to just begin by thanking everybody who's been working so hard across all of our communities, our First Nation and municipal governments, across our own government. People have been working late into the night to prepare us for this pandemic, and I just want to begin by acknowledging all of that work. As you're all aware, the COVID-19 situation is evolving rapidly in Canada and around the world. Here in the Yukon, we're lucky. The Chief Medical Officer of Health has shared that we do not yet have evidence of community spread of COVID-19. And we are hearing stories every day of people self-isolating, practicing physical distancing, working from home, and supporting each other so that we can protect ourselves and our communities from the disease. However, we are also vulnerable. Our medical system could quickly become overwhelmed if community spread of COVID occurred here. This is particularly the case for Yukon's rural communities, which we need to take all steps to protect. That's why it is so important that we act quickly to prevent the possibility of community spread and ensure that the good position we're in today stays that way. Today, we're announcing important measures that the Yukon government is taking to make the Chief Medical Officer of Health's orders enforceable under the Civil Emergency Measures Act, and some additional measures to strengthen our ability to enforce the health protection orders. We're taking strong steps to keep our communities safe and protect from COVID-19 while also keeping society running. The protection of our rural communities in particular is of the utmost importance. We're using the Civil Emergency Measures Act to enact these orders, which reinforce those of the Chief Medical Officer of Health. As set out in an order under the Civil Emergency Measures Act, any person entering into the Yukon will be stopped by an enforcement officer and required to fill out an information form detailing travel plans, including details such as phone number and planned stops. Anyone failing to do so is subject to an offense. We are introducing clear rules and procedures for workers who are offering critical or essential services to Yukoners for travel into the Yukon and between our communities. These guidelines can be found on yukon.ca and are now enforceable under the Civil Emergency Measures Act. They are the law. The direction and guidelines for the delivery of critical and essential services in response to COVID-19 lists those services required for the basic function of society. All provinces and territories have a comprehensive list, and ours aligns with similarly defined services found in every jurisdiction in Canada. For greater clarity, the new Emergency Measures Health Protection Order requires that all travelers into the Yukon must self-isolate for 14 days. This applies generally to all people, including essential service workers, with exceptions for the most critical of these service providers that may need to travel out of the Yukon or come from another jurisdiction from time to time. The only exceptions to the mandatory 14-day self-isolation requirement for cross-border travel is for a very limited set of critical services and for those people returning home through the Yukon to other jurisdictions. These critical services are ones that are required to preserve life, health, and basic society function. Critical services is a service that is reasonably required to be provided in order to preserve life, health, and basic function of Yukon society. This includes health sector workers, first responders, and critical infrastructure workers. The guidelines also outline process and consideration for Yukon-based essential services travel and work between Yukon communities. The rules are meant to balance the Chief Medical Officer of Health's recommendations to limit non-essential travel to Yukon communities in order to reduce the potential for spread to our most vulnerable rural communities with the need to implement public health requirements in provision of essential services and business that is conducted in and between our communities. We will also ensure government has a process to share information and planning with municipalities and First Nation governments to prioritize work. Yukon's response to COVID-19 is guided by the Chief Medical Officer of Health. In the Yukon, we still have the opportunity and responsibility to contain COVID-19 and avoid community transmission. Our medical system cannot afford widespread community transmission, and we must continue to fight hard against such a possibility. We will act to stop the spread of COVID-19 in the territory by enforcing these orders, while also continuing to deliver critical and essential services in a way that protects all of us, including our medical system. Some of the specific measures contained in the order are as follows. When an individual enters the Yukon, they will be required to stop, make a declaration that includes the person's name, address of their ordinary residence, and phone number. If the individual does not normally live in the Yukon, they would need to provide information about all places in the Yukon where they plan to go, along with declaration that they are not symptomatic. For Yukoners returning home and for essential workers, they must self-isolate for 14 days. For those people in transit returning to Alaska or the Northwest Territories, they may pass through as long as they do not remain in the Yukon for longer than 24 hours. They too must take direction on how to move through to limit potential contact with Yukoners. There are some exemptions for critical service workers and for residents of northern BC in the Yukon border communities like Lower Post and Atlin that we are treating as if they were residents of the Yukon, recognizing that they get essential services like food, fuel, and medicine from the Yukon. I want to be clear that these two new orders, the Emergency Measures Health Protection Order and the Civil Emergency Measures Enforcement Order, which I've just signed, give force to the Chief Medical Officer of Health's direction to Yukoners and are now enforceable under law. This means that those failing to comply with these orders could face a fine, imprisonment, or both. Minister McPhee will be giving more details on enforcement after I speak. Last week, the Premier told the Yukon that we were enacting the Civil Emergency Measures Act. He mentioned that this act is an important tool to help fight COVID-19. Today's measures show that we are using this tool to help curb the spread and keep Yukoners safe. Mobilization of resources for enforcement at our borders is a top priority and will be operational in the coming days. Enforcement officers will be stationed at entry points to the territory, including the airport, and will be notifying travelers about their obligation to self-isolate, as well as collecting information from them so we can contact them to ensure they are following self-isolation orders. In the meantime, now that it is law, it is possible to issue tickets and charges that could lead to jail time for non-compliance. We may choose to make more measures enforceable under the Civil Emergencies Act should these be necessary to support the direction and advice of the Chief Medical Officer of Health. None of this is easy. Not for us as a government, not for businesses, residents, industry, essential service providers, or average Yukoners like you. We're taking steps to safeguard the Yukon, and we're asking that everyone band together while maintaining a safe distance from each other to keep us all safe from the spread of COVID-19. Thank you for doing your part to prevent the spread of disease in our territory. We'll get through this together. These measures are meant to reduce the risk for all Yukoners, and we must take them seriously. I'd now like to invite Minister McPhee to provide some more details.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Minister Streicker. The COVID-19 global pandemic has impacted and changed the lives of every person on the earth. Our government's primary goal is to protect the health and safety of Yukoners. We've taken a number of important steps, many you've heard about over the last few days and weeks, in an effort to take actions going forward, and to inform you of those steps is our job today. The orders issued today represent yet another tool to deal with and manage this rapidly evolving situation, and to set out the direction of what is being done going forward on enforcement during this time. These orders are all intended to further protect our territory during this pandemic and to reflect the concerns that we are hearing from Yukoners. This afternoon, I'll just spend a few minutes discussing the orders and the next steps for our government on implementation and enforcement measures, and what we need from Yukoners to help us move forward through and beyond this pandemic. Orders under the Civil Emergency Measures Act will be enforced by peace officers, as well as those persons who have enforcement authority under other pieces of legislation. Enforcement officers are provided the authority to enforce these orders and future orders that might be made under the Civil Emergencies Measures Act. Some examples might be conservation officers, sheriffs, liquor inspectors, bylaw officers, First Nations land officers, and others. Enforcement officers have all the powers of a peace officer, including the ability to charge individuals. Enforcement officers will be responsible for enforcement of these orders, which include the requirement to self-isolate, the requirement for essential workers coming to the territory to self-isolate, the requirement for all individuals arriving in the Yukon to provide a declaration and abide by that declaration, the requirement to follow the advice of the Chief Medical Officer of Health, the requirement not to congregate in groups of 10 or more people, the requirement that restaurants will not provide on-site places to eat and drink, the requirement that bars be closed, that dental services, except in emergency situations, won't be provided, and that personal service establishments are closed. People who do not comply with these orders may be subject to fines and imprisonment of a term not exceeding 6 months or both. Enforcement officers will, effective today, have the authority to enforce these orders. The message to Yukoners is clear. These are not suggestions. These are not guidelines. These are the law. Establishing these laws and commencing enforcement is a first step. Next, we will establish the infrastructure that will allow for individuals who notice an infraction to report it to the appropriate authorities. We will be advancing this work over the next days. We ask Yukoners to be vigilant with their own behavior and reminding their friends and family to abide by these new laws. Throughout this process, we will continue to communicate. Education is the best tool towards enforcement and achieving the objective, which is to keep us all safe. Each individual Yukoner's efforts on this front are critical to the protection of our health and safety, and that of your family, your friends, your neighbors, and your communities. I want to thank all Yukoners for working together for our shared safety. We know that many, many Yukoners are abiding by these former rules, now laws already, and have been doing an amazing effort to keep everyone safe. Yukoners are strong and resilient and determined people. I too want to take an opportunity to thank all of the people behind the scenes working on our behalf. Members of the public service, members of the media, members of the communities in working in grocery stores and essential services and critical services and healthcare. It is just an amazing experience here in the territory to see how we are all working together to keep each other safe. Take care of each other. Please be kind. Let us use our collective strength as Yukoners to get through this time together. Thank you.
All right, I'll go to the phone. The first person on is John from CKRW.
Hi, my question's for Minister McPhee. So with the Whitehorse Correctional Center and prisoners and the possible enforcement of jail time for anyone not willing to adhere to the enforcement rules, I guess what provisions are in place for the people currently at the correctional center, the prisoners? Are they physically distancing in any way? How are they being treated during a time like this?
Thanks very much for the question. For those who might not be able to hear it, I'm being asked about the Whitehorse Correctional Center and what the provisions are there for individuals who are in the correctional center. Absolutely, the department is responding in relation to the recommendations of the Chief Medical Officer of Health. There is distancing required. There is increased sanitation. There is hand washing provisions. All the responsibilities and requirements recommended to date and now law by the Chief Medical Officer of Health are being abided by. There is reduced opportunity for people going in and out. Visitation of the Whitehorse Correctional Center. Visitation has been curtailed. Programming, except for the programming that is provided by individuals who work there, has been reduced for safety reasons. And there is the opportunity with the current numbers of individuals at the Whitehorse Correctional Center for the proper distancing to be observed.
John, do you have a follow-up to that?
I was just going to ask, I guess, how are those measures going to be adjusted as the potential amount of more people are injected into the system? With enforcement, you say there could be jail time. Doesn't that mean more people could be in the area? What kind of adaptations will be made?
Thanks for the follow-up. I think that that's not an immediate concern. The question is about if there's increased numbers of people going to the Whitehorse Correctional Center as a result of enforcing these provisions and these orders in light of COVID-19. That's not a process that's immediate, of course. An individual would need to be charged. Evidence would need to be gathered. An individual would need to be charged and ultimately go through the court process. There are a variety of options available for somebody who did commit such offense, including fines and ultimately possible jail time. They would need to be, of course, serious offenses, of which we are taking the view that all such offenses are serious. But I don't think it's an issue with respect to all of a sudden overcrowding at the Whitehorse Correctional Center.
All right, to Julian at the Narwhal.
Yeah, my question has do with critical workers. So I'm wondering if critical workers also include minors. I suppose this question is for John Streicker.
Yeah, so we'll be publishing the direction and guidelines for delivery of critical, essential, and other services in response to COVID-19 onto yukon.ca. And so I just always encourage all Yukoners that we'll put all the information that we can there. And so I think the question that I heard from Julian is, will mining be considered critical? And the answer to that is no, not as far as I know. Critical would include more things like our healthcare providers and making sure that food is available. So it can include things like transportation, et cetera. But so that's not considered critical. Our list, we used guidelines from the federal list. We looked at BC's list, and we've been working closely with municipalities and First Nations to get this list out. And it's very similar to lists across the country, and we're making it available today.
Thanks. I'm just going to add that that the definition of critical workers is in the health protection order that's being issued today, and it does describe, as Minister Streicker has said, that they are critical services needed to provide essential life-saving and opportunities, emergency services to Yukoners. They include individuals who provide the following services, including those involving food, water, medicine, energy or utilities, information technology, transportation, and some government services. But there is a good definition included in the health protection order of what are critical services.
Julian, do you have a follow-up to that?
No, thank you.
Gabrielle with the Whitehorse Star.
I'm hoping you can expand on the difference between an enforcement officer and a peace officer. Are there differences in powers or what each can do?
Thanks, Gabrielle. I think the question, you cut out a little bit, but I think the question is there a difference between an enforcement officer and a peace officer? So,
yeah, what are the differences in powers?
okay, under the Civil Emergency Measures Act, the individuals who will be brought to service to become enforcement officers will have all of the powers of a peace officer. So there won't be any distinction. They'll have all of the powers that they are afforded under their original, if I can say it that way, their original legislation. So if they're a conservation officer, they'll have the authority of all the rules and duties and responsibilities of a conservation officer, but now they will also have the duties, the increased duties of that of a peace officer if they don't have them already by nature of their original job, and they will be granted those authorities under the Civil Emergency Measures Act, and they will work at the direction of the Civil Emergency Planning Officer.
And Gabrielle, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, is becoming an enforcement officer voluntary? If I'm a conservation officer, do I have to now take on these new duties?
You know, the question that I heard from Gabrielle is do people have to do certain things? There's all sorts of work out there which is critical, and of course individuals may choose if maybe they've got health reasons and they're choosing not to continue with the work that they have in front of them. I think it raises an important question that we don't force people to work, but it is important that we make sure that these critical services are provided. I think what we're seeing is that we have a range of folks out there, and Minister McPhee listed off a set of them, including working with our municipalities and our First Nation governments, because they may also have people who want to or are willing to be part of this solution. I think that we're going to cast a wide net, and that will allow us to have people that are going to be able to provide this service. And so at this point, we believe that we'll be fine. But we will always respect workers who want to make sure that they themselves feel safe doing the work that they're doing.
I'll go to Gord with the Yukon News.
Yes, there was talk about people visiting the territory having to check in to report if they're symptomatic or what they're doing in the territory and where they're going. You mentioned there would be these, we'll call them stations at the airport. Are there going at airports? Are there going to be stations, I guess, along the territorial border? And if so, where?
Yeah, I'll start and
Yeah,
you follow up.
go
Okay,
ahead. Yeah.
so the answer is yes. So at all of the crossings is where we'll work later today with the Canadian Border Securities Agency. I spoke earlier today with Minister Bill Blair, and we just agreed that after we had passed these orders that we would talk again. We've already been working towards this. So, for example, where the Alaska Highway comes into the Yukon, where the Stewart Cassiar Highway comes in, where the South Klondike Highway comes in, where the Haines Road comes in. Right now, the Top of the World Highway is closed, so that's not of concern. The Dempster. So at all of our points of entry, we will station people to talk to all those coming through, and I'll begin this conversation, and then Minister McPhee, I think, can follow up. But what we're saying is that if you're a critical service or an essential service, then welcome. What we're saying is that if you're a Yukoner returning home, then welcome. But we're also saying that those essential services and those Yukoners returning home, they need to self-isolate. If you are legitimately in transit to head to your home in Alaska or Northwest Territories, then we will provide guidelines for you to do that in a safe manner and quickly. And if you're not coming for those reasons, if you're coming for some other reason, which is not to return home or not to provide an essential service, then you're not welcome. So that's what we're doing today, and we will do it at all of our border crossings. I don't know, Minister McPhee, if you want to add.
No, I don't think I have anything to add. I think that's pretty clear.
And Gord, do you have a follow-up for that?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Claudiane with Radio Canada.
Yes, hi. Wondering what happens for those transiting through the territory who happen to have some issues like breakdown on their way. What happens then? We understand there are some concerns from some communities along the Alaska Highway of having to help out some travelers through. So whose responsibility is it then?
Well, so what we did today was we brought in place this order, and we will provide those that information for the travelers as they arrive. They'll sign a declaration so that they understand what their responsibilities are. We'll work through with service stations along the highway about how to make sure that's done safely. I did speak, for example, maybe it was just 2 days ago with the Kluane First Nation and Chief Dixon, and explained that a traveler had gone off the road and that person had gone knocking on doors. And you can imagine that is very disconcerting for the community members. Well, what we would like to do is to talk to those travelers so that if they have a problem, they know how to reach us, so that we can get them assistance in a way that is going to minimize their impact onto the communities. We need to do both. We need to both keep our communities safe, and we need to also find a way to help these people to get home. Just as I'm sure we would all want to know that if Yukoners are driving home, and we all know Yukoners who are driving home now, that they would have a way to do so quickly and safely without spreading COVID-19 or the risk of COVID-19. So we will find a way to support those travelers so that they don't have to interact with our communities in a way that would put our communities at risk.
Claudiane, do you have a follow-up to that?
Well, people have been criticizing and asking that the border is just closed down to non-residents. Why not just close down the border?
Well, we would like to get food in. We would like to get fuel in. We would like to get doctors in, medevacs. We would like to be able to make sure that our telecommunications continues to work. There's all sorts of things. I appreciate, you know what, I think all of us understand that there is concern and fear and anxiety across all of our communities. And so what we're doing is to make sure that the way that people come in and the services that come in are things that are essential, critical, or for people who are going home. Now, we need to be respectful that there are some people that will be going home to Alaska or the Northwest Territories. It turns out the Yukon is not the end of the road. So just like we hope that BC will be respectful for Yukoners traveling home through British Columbia, we need to be respectful for those others that are traveling home. If it's people that are just, if it's unwanted travel, well, sorry, you're not welcome.
I can just add perhaps a little reminder, which is that the advice of the Chief Medical Officer of Health, our strength to date is having Yukoners comply with safe interactions, how those can be done. People do need to get food, they need to get essential supplies, they need to get medication, but they can do so in a safe way, and closing the borders completely is not necessarily going to guarantee that anyway. As Yukoners at home, we need to make sure that we're physical distancing. We need to make sure that we're practicing very strong hygiene, that our hands are being washed, that we're careful where we go, and that we're careful about the amount of people that we interact with. And those are our strongest tools.
I'll go to Steve with CBC.
Thank you. I would like to know if there are any plans to introduce fines or other penalties for people not abiding by physical distancing. And will the government announce when someone is fined or otherwise penalized under the enforcement measures announced today?
Sorry, I didn't really hear.
He's asking if there's a consideration to introduce fines or penalties for people who aren't social distancing, and also if we'll be announcing when a fine or penalty is given.
It is absolutely one of the provisions of the orders that are being put in place today that you must self-isolate and you must physical distance and you must not gather in groups of larger than 10 people, or and a number of other provisions that we've outlined already. That is the change. That is now the law. So yes, there will be fines and penalties introduced and meted out if individuals are not abiding by those laws and are not practicing the measures that will keep us all safe. We don't have any provisions at the moment or any ability to sort of produce a list of individuals that have died, if that's the question, a list of individuals who will have been charged or ultimately convicted of these kinds of offenses or the offenses under the Civil Emergency Measures Act. And we don't do that for other reasons, although of course the court process is a public one, and presumably that is to continue, although I caution that some court matters are now being done, of course, virtually or over telecommunications. So the courthouse is still open and those are public processes, but we won't be producing a list that I'm aware of.
Do you have a follow-up, Steve?
Yeah, so if I heard correctly, so people can face penalties for not physically distancing. So if I'm standing next to somebody just a meter away at the grocery store, what am I looking at in terms of a penalty or a fine?
Well, it's a complicated process. I'm kind of hoping the person you're standing next to is going to turn to you and say, could you back off just a little, because they'll be wanting to observe the same thing and so will you. A situation where there is a report of a breach of this type of offense will be properly investigated, and charges can be laid. Tickets will also likely be able to be issued. So those are all options in the coming days.
Can I just add, I think overall what we're trying to do is foster that correct behavior, and part of this, by announcing the seriousness with which we take this, is to just help reinforce with Yukoners that we don't want anyone not compliant. So we hope that, and in conversation with our communities, the municipalities and the First Nations, they've let us know that they want these tools as a means of trying to encourage Yukoners to do the right thing. We've been seeing it generally. There's just some instances where it's not appropriate. And we hope that this next step will help to get us further. But we're not afraid to go there, to fines and charges. We will do what it takes in order for us to make sure that the recommendations, now the orders or the law that the Chief Medical Officer of Health has given to us, is going to be abided by.
I'll go to Marine at the Aurore Boreal.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, that's all the questions or all the media we have with us today. Has anyone joined since we began? Have we missed any members of the media?
I have a follow-up.
Can you identify yourself, please?
It's Julian from the Narwhal.
Go ahead.
So now that mining is deemed an essential service, what does it mean for miners in the territory? How will the emergency measures announced today affect mining?
Do you want to go?
I can go and I'll look it up.
So what we've done today is to bring into the rules all that the Chief Medical Officer of Health has recommended to date, and that what we now have are these guidelines which are going to work across the whole of the territory. So it's about how to make sure that those essential services are done safely. So that's how I understand the work today, and I'm happy to get Minister Play's office to follow up with you more directly about specific questions that have to do with mining or any other industry.
Thanks. I can just add a little bit to that. In the enforcement order that's issued today, there is a description of the prescribed offense under the Summary Convictions Act, and it indicates that a contravention of any of the following provisions will be prescribed as an offense, and one of those is an individual working in a mining industry must self-isolate in a place other than a mine or a camp. So that's the specifics in the order today.
All right, thank you. We'll end here. Thanks for your time.